I'm going to show you how to build an indoor dinosaur shelter in Jurassic World Evolution 2. I built this habitat for Utahraptors, but you can use this shelter for any of these smaller species. Especially for the PS4 and Xbox One gamers who are fans of the channel, I used only Jurassic World buildings and the biome foliage of the map. As with so many of my builds, it starts with using the monorail tracks for something other than transportation. The monorail roof I'm building here will be the roof of the shelter. Now, due to the trick we need to employ to lower the roof, you have to pull the monorail tracks out to their maximum length, but to make it work, it can only be one track length. The little bits of track you see me adding to the end are just so I can place the next track as close as possible to the previous without the two wanting to snap together. Once I have the desired size of the monorail roof, I delete those extra pieces of track, as well as the path that I used to guide my placement. For this build, I wanted to lower the monorail roof, and specifically I wanted to lower it to about the height of a fence. So I placed a concrete fence in front at the center opening between the pillars. This will be the front of our shelter. To lower the monorail track to the desired height, you have to lower the terrain under both ends. And to lower the monorail as much as we want, we have to dig deep. Unfortunately, due to the limited terrain editing in the game, you do lose a lot of space to the slopes, which is why we had to use maximum track lengths earlier, so we still have some usable flat space left under the monorail roof. I always say use terrain elevation in your parks, it makes them so much better. So rather than having these two pits on either end of the shelter, I'd say extend at least one of them into an entire lower section of your park. As a bit of a security measure for the rest of the build, I've placed these shipping containers under the ends of the monorail. These lock the terrain in place so that I don't accidentally lift up my roof while I'm building as I'm placing other stuff, and I'll delete these shipping containers at the end. Next, I'm using even more monorail, this time as a decorative flare. I just really like the flow of the track that this creates. It makes the build look more spectacular, and I think using the monorail track repeatedly as part of a design makes it stand out less and seem less odd than if you only use it once. The foliage is going to help us hide the useless ends of the monorail tracks as much as possible. In my experience, you can hide them best on the tropical map, especially in combination with the tall Mediterranean tree if you have the all biomes option available. The shelter itself is pretty basic. An opening in front functions as the entry for the animals. I line the interior with more concrete for that cozy, sheltered look. And on the other end, I put a viewing gallery so our guests can look into this area. Key to guaranteeing that your animals will use the shelter is to place a feeder in there. In the next part of the build, I'm playing around a little bit to figure out the layout of the fence and the path that goes with it. I did struggle with the realization that it was turning out smaller than I had envisioned in my head, and I wanted to do too much in one habitat. With the shelter, 2 extra viewing galleries, and a remote viewing dome, as well as guest viewing from the path, it was too much, realistically. I probably should have changed it up a bit and elongated the habitat to give it more space, but I stubbornly decided to trudge on with it. If you plan on building this, you can of course make any adjustments that you like. This video is merely to hopefully inspire you and give you new ideas that get you excited about building in Jurassic World Evolution 2. If you've been enjoying this video so far, please give it a like, that would really help me out. And if you like it so much that you want to see more just like it, consider subscribing to the channel. This exhibit speed build is the latest in a whole playlist of exhibit speed builds to inspire you. And again, just because I use the Utahraptor doesn't mean you have to. In fact, I only picked Utahraptor after the build was complete. I let the paleo members of the channel decide which of these 3 raptors they wanted to see a build for today. As always, I'm also including the accompanying guest area in this build. Dinosaur habitats don't exist in a vacuum. They are part of the overall park, which is why I always show examples of what you can do with the surrounding guest areas. I'm also doing a little bit of work on the surrounding terrain because even though I will not be expanding this build into a full park, I do think about how it connects to a park overall, and that's something for you to keep in mind as well. You know, even though I'm showing you this little piece of the puzzle, you can build a whole park around it or fit it into one of your existing parks. But now we're moving over to the habitat work, I suppose. I kept the pond really small because Utahraptor actually can't walk through water. They like to keep their feathers dry, so just a little pond for drinking, a bit of a mound to hide the access point for the remote dome, and just a whole lot of foliage. I chose this map because I really wanted to use these red trees in combination with the red Utahraptors. I think that looks really, really beautiful. As you remember from the start of this video, I decided to do this build using only the Jurassic World buildings and decorations and the foliage of the given biome, which definitely came with some unpleasant surprises and challenges. I am so used to having all decorations at my disposal that I don't know which are included in the Jurassic World set specifically, so there were definitely some times where I realized I couldn't use the decoration that I had planned to use because it simply wasn't part of this set. I particularly missed the Jurassic Park gates, the banner, the wall pieces from the Jurassic Park anniversary update, and the low Malta wall. Those are decorations that I use in pretty much all of my builds, but of course for the shelter the most important thing was the monorail and the concrete fence. The biggest restriction with regards to the foliage was, surprisingly, not that I missed the big fluffy bush that I always love using, but actually one of the tropical plants that I would have used to fill in gaps between the fence and the path. This is a super useful plant because it's low enough that guests can look over it while still having enough volume to cover the ground. To fill the void that was left, I used a lot of these small potted plants, which I 100% do not recommend. I kept checking and looking at it, hoping that I would hate it so I wouldn't use it, but unfortunately I didn't hate it. I do like how it looks, but it's not worth eating up your frame rate. It's not that good. If you do this a couple of times in your park, you are going to tank performance. I only did it here because I knew this habitat wouldn't get expanded on, so I didn't have to be frugal with my decorations. And honestly, here's a little side tip: if you are struggling with running into performance issues during park builds, or issues with motivation that you just end up giving up halfway through a build, I understand the temptation of wanting to build like huge parks every single time, right? But I think it's really fun and also just a solution to the problem to build smaller parks, or even just do what I do and build a singular habitat and just leave it at that, and pour all of your own creativity, all of your patience, all of your ideas, and all of your systems, performance power into that one build and make it as good as possible. You know, to spruce up or sprinkle in between your bigger full park builds. And I hope my channel will serve as an extensive source of inspiration and ideas and tips and tricks for if you do want to tackle those big builds or if you want to keep it small from time to time. In spite of the limitations with regards to the decoration use, I think the habitat and the surrounding area still turned out great. As always, it's just a case of adding a lot of detail, and I think over 2 years down the line, we've all developed our go-tos when it comes to decorating. But I hope my videos can still give you some new ideas on top of that. Let me know in a comment down below what you think of it and if you will be using this shelter in your parks. I do apologize that it's been a while since the previous exhibit Speedbuild, but really the weekly building series, which is currently Mini Sorna, use up a lot of my ideas for habitats. They're basically habitats ideas every single week, but I definitely want to get back to doing the speed builds on the regular as well, and I can't wait for the next pack to be revealed so we can do dedicated videos for those species. Subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the news and of course tips and tricks, and stay tuned for a showcase of this build at the end of the video.